The WSL is back after 2 weeks away, and that means we're back with our weekend roundup. Game week 7, the WSL. I think on paper, Harry, these games, I didn't expect them to be quite as good as they were, but we saw a lot of goals, a lot of action, and a lot of drama.
Exactly that. Once again, a game week that didn't really see two big sides clash, but we saw some brilliant games. Got absolute goal fest in quite a lot of them, and we actually saw, I think, a couple of surprising results, or at least sides that before the international break had been struggling, came back and refreshed from that break and have come in, and they actually played a lot better than they did in the first 6 game weeks. So I think that the international break was a really good refresh, and as we saw in this match week, some teams really upped their game and created some very good action.
Absolutely. I think a wild game week deserves a bit of uniqueness to this show. So for the first time in TWFC history, we're going to start our weekend roundup without involving any of the big four clubs.
Wow.
And instead, we're going to start, where else could we start, than Aston Villa 3, Everton 3. I didn't even say that the right way round. I've changed that up as well. Aston Villa, though, dominated this game in stages. Everton bounced back in stages. It was a mental game of football. Everton scored the first and the last goal in this game, Harry. How would you summarise the match?
Very different. It's very hard to, but I think it's one of those where it was a mix of brilliance in front of goal and defensive calamities. We saw some beautiful strikes, but we also saw some terrible box defending from both teams involved. So a real mix of style and outcome that ended up being a point each. I really did not think at any point in this match it was going to end in a draw. It was that, end to end, it felt like we'd get a winner at some point, but Everton had other ideas with 94 minutes on the clock. But a really good game from the neutral point of view. I think both clubs will be frustrated that they didn't get the win, because at points they should have both won this football match. But especially for Aston Villa, I thought that there were periods in the match where they played very well. They were slow to get going. They really struggled to get into the game. Everton took advantage of that. But when Villa played their stuff, they looked really good. And if it wasn't some absolute howlers in and around their own penalty area, I think they're absolutely fine. Don't get me wrong, Kelly Gargo's a good player, but neither of her goals should have gone in. And I think Villa and Royal will be frustrated by that, because they looked really good when they came forward, but an absolute mess at the back, and that allowed Everton into the game. And at the end of the day, it's the reason that Everton took a point away from Villa Park.
Yeah, I think defensive frailties were the theme of the day, really, in this game. Neither side covered themselves in glory, particularly when defending. I thought that Villa, throughout this season so far, have been very good defensively, but in this game looked uncharacteristically poor at the back. There seemed to be a lack of communication, a lack of understanding. There's no organisation in that back line. What do you attribute that to, Harry? Where's that come from? Because so far this season has been really good defensively. What went wrong in this game?
It's really difficult because, personnel-wise, there wasn't many changes. There wasn't any changes, really, defensively, I think. And, D'Angelo's had a very good season in net up until this point. But I think it's one of those where we've said it about a couple of types of sides in this division, is sometimes they look better when they play it safer, and they're better at being the underdog. In these kind of games, up against the likes of Everton, Villa have got the quality to be the better team, and because they went for the game and went aggressive, it left them really vulnerable. What we've seen Villa do so well this season, I mean, the Arsenal game was a perfect example of it, was sit deep, be defensively regimented, and then hit teams on the counter. And although their chances did come on the break, I thought that they just found themselves higher up the pitch than they used to, higher up the pitch than they usually are in other games, and Everton took full advantage of that. And it's one of those where if Everton had a bit more clinicality, they would have won this football match quite easily, because Villa gave up way too many chances in the box, in their own 6-yard box. It was a catastrophe. They looked all over the place. But yeah, I think Villa just ended up too high and then out of position when they were defending, and Everton took full advantage of that. But it's definitely something Villa have got to look at, because, as I say, there wasn't any personnel changes compared to what we've seen usually for Villa this season. So tactically, they just got really caught out, and they've got to be careful that, they've done some really good work, Villa, against the bigger sides in the league, the better sides in the league. They've got to be careful that they don't undo all that hard work by dropping points to sides that are in and around the bottom 2 and 3.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Everton, despite sitting 3, showed a lot more character than they have in recent weeks. But yeah, bit of a mental game. I've never seen a game have 6 goals, yet just 4 combined shots on target. I think that is a stat that perfectly summates this game, because how is that even feasibly possible? But yeah, I mean, just a mental game of football. In terms of some individuals to touch upon, Kelly Gargo, finally playing up front through the middle in this Everton side. Finally plays a full 90 minutes, and look what comes of it, Harry. How good was Gargo on Sunday?
Absolutely brilliant. She's a bit like Erling Haaland in the men's game. It's just inevitable. Look at last season. When Kelly Gargo was on the football pitch, you knew she was going to find the back of the net, but yeah, I thought she was absolutely brilliant in this game. Again, it was the physical presence. No one could get near her. Just bullied players off the ball. I thought for her first goal, again, a brilliant show of that physical element. But gets the right side of the ball and then manages to just lash it across goal. And it was just all round really good. Again, her third goal, she won that aerial battle, was allowed to bring it down and then smashed it into the back of the net. Gargo is all about power and physicality, and she's just unstoppable at times when in these kind of games. She's really good at that combative element, and Everton know that if they can get the ball into the box, Kelly Gargo will be the one to get on the end of it and probably put it in the back of the net. So again, really good to see Gargo getting on the score sheet and proving that it wasn't just a really good purple patch when she joined the league last year. That she can come in and deliver consistently. I think what Gargo does is when she plays, she gives Everton a game plan because they wanted to get the ball wide and get it into Gargo. They didn't look lost. They had an objective and they executed that, and they scored 3 goals from it and drew the football match. So it looked better. It was more purposeful for Everton. At times they've gone out this season, they just look all over the place, all out at sea, and no one's really working together. But they're much more of a unit. They've just got to sort their defensive issues out because, again, I think that you can never expect in football, you can never expect to concede 3 goals in a game and somehow get something from that match. That is a very rare phenomenon that ever happens. So I think both sides defensively got very lucky to come away with something from this match. But Gargo's superb, and I thought her and Payne worked brilliantly, and as I said, it gave Everton a bit of life and a bit of something to work with. And as I said, overall, brought a point home.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, two sides who have drawn the most games of anyone in the league so far this season. I think for very different reasons. Villa haven't been able to kill games off. I mean, obviously they also had that draw against Arsenal where they managed to scrape a point there. But for the most of this season, it's been they haven't been able to kill games off. I think that was prevalent again in this game. For Everton, it's sort of been the other way around where they've just been able to hold on and scrape that draw just about. But yeah, I think that that then makes sense to why we saw this result. But Villa, I think, much better in an attacking sense. We've spoken a lot about how good the defence has been this season. Only 4 goals conceded before this game. That's now up to 7. Almost half of their goals conceded in just one match. But equally, they'd only scored 4 coming into this game. And that's also now up to 7. So again, almost half of the goals they've scored coming in this game. So while the defence did suffer a lot better in attacking areas, Georgia Mullet came into side, a goal and assist for her on her first start of the season. That was very impressive, Harry.
Yeah, massive credit to her and Arroyo for trusting in the youth players. And again, we've seen Kendall deliver and that's been brilliant. We've seen Mullet feature a little bit, but her first start in this game, and she did exactly what you have to do when you're a young player. Took advantage. Salmon out of form. Arroyo gave Mullet the go to start from the off, and she took full advantage of it, getting on the score sheet, linking up so well with Hansen. I thought her first finish, yes, a little bit unorthodox, kind of off her knee, off her thigh, that kind of area into what was an open goal where she was stood. If she'd missed it, it would have probably been more impressive. So did well to get on the end of it and put it in the back of the net. Didn't mess it up that badly. I thought it was actually the assist I was more impressed with, that incisive breakaway, really quick down the right-hand side, and manages to thread that ball perfectly into Kirsty Hansen, even with 2 Everton bodies surrounding her. That, for me, was more impressive than her goal. But yeah, overall, really complete performance from another young player that is thriving under Arroyo, and we're seeing these brilliant talents emerge. And if that's a combination that Villa can get going between Mullet and Hansen, then they're going to be, it's going to be a real threat, because we know how consistently good Kirsty Hansen has been for 3-4 years now in a Villa shirt. So mightily impressive, and if Mullet can start working up there with her and they can be in sync, then it's going to be a dangerous combination. And as you say, if they can start shoring it up at the back, that those attacking rewards will definitely deliver, hopefully for Villa's sake, a couple more wins this season.
Yeah, they do need to start finding the back of the net. I mean, you speak there about how Mullet, yes, that chance looked harder to miss than it was to score, but equally a lot of Villa chances have this season, and they still haven't found a route to goal. So yeah, I think huge credit to her taking her opportunity, and I think she now deserves that run in the side particularly after how poor Salmon's been at taking her chance this season. So yeah, much better for Villa. in terms of the table, there was a point in this game where Villa were down to 9th. There was a point when they were up to 6th. They do end the day in 8th. It's been a difficult season, or a weird season for Villa so far, because they've only lost one match of football, but they find themselves 8th in the league, 2 points off the top half, but equally 2 points ahead of the likes of Everton and Leicester. Nowhere near relegation, but that is mainly due to the fact that Liverpool and West Ham are so far off everyone else at the moment that there isn't really that threat. But yeah, it's just been a bit of a strange season for Villa so far.
Yeah, again, I think it's the same sentiment that we said in every match week, really. I think for Aston Villa is that, again, the performances are there or thereabouts. They're just not getting the results. As you know, only losing one game out of your first 6 sounds pretty impressive, but also only winning one game out of 6 is also, sounds pretty bad. Obviously, they've got that game in hand, so if they win that, they could be up there. But it's one of those where it's so tight. They're 2 or 3 wins away from suddenly being, 5th, 6th in the league, and that suddenly looks like a very handy season. So again, no need to panic for Villa. I think this result told us absolutely nothing, to be completely honest about us, or didn't tell us anything new about Villa. It was one of those games where, what we've learned about Villa this season is they actually look solid defensively, not great going forwards. It completely flipped in this game, but it was a 3-3. That's something that I don't expect to see from Villa this season. They're not going to consistently be involved in 6-goal thrillers, but yeah, again, not too worried about Aston Villa. I think they'll pick it up. I definitely see them getting into the top half at some point this season, because they can't keep playing at a very decent standard and just not getting the wins. The wins will come again, especially if Muller and Co can start firing consistently, and if they can bring that defensive solidity back again. Then I can definitely see them picking up a few more points as we head into the winter break. Bit of a tough run, but overall, I'd still, I back them to get results against some difficult sides.
Yeah, as for Everton, another week, another stupid own goal. If they can cut those out, maybe they'll be all right, because the Kittigar one against United was confusing. The Ruben Mace one in this game equally so. I'm not sure why she felt the need to go for that ball, let alone slice it into the back of her own net. But this felt like a much more resilient performance from Everton. They got that opening goal. They were then pegged back twice in the game, and they kept coming back from that. And I think they did really well, but they shouldn't have had to keep doing that. They shouldn't have given up the chance they did. If you look at the stats in this game, Villa only had 2 shots on target, and they both went in, and they had another goal that they didn't even put anywhere near the target. That has got to be cut out of Everton's game, because it's just not a sustainable way to play when there's so many errors at the back and there's so much confusion there. And I think it should start in goal, where there are there is a lot to be improved there. I think we've seen Emily Ramsey struggle a bit this season. I think the back line doesn't help. There's a lot of it's a bit of a mess there. But yeah, I think it's an interesting one. Villa in this game, 3 big chances. Only 2 missed, one missed, 2 taken. As for Everton, 2 big chances created, 1 missed, 1 taken. So, yeah, interesting game from both sides, really. I don't think either were incredible, but of a mental game that leaves them both in the bottom half of the table still. But, yeah, work for both of them to do. Let's get on then to our next game. Leicester City 1, Arsenal 4. A quick start for Arsenal in this match. Russo scoring on the 7th minute. A really tidy finish, but I think it was a sign of things to come. Everton really switched off defensively in this match.
Yeah, they did. I think, again, it was definitely a game of Arsenal improving their performance and Leicester dropping their standard, and it coincided really nicely for a big Arsenal victory. I think that it was uncharacteristic of Leicester. Again, we've praised them, and we praised them and Rick Passmore for how defensively solid they've looked this season, and how that after a couple of drubbing, the loss to Man United, especially in match week 1, they shored up a little bit. They only conceded 1 at Chelsea. They managed to sit in, get numbers at the back, and defend their penalty area well. This was the complete opposite. They were all over the place, and another own goal. Just box defending was atrocious, but massive credit to Arsenal, because this was a much improved performance in terms of in certain aspects. Of course, there's still things they need to get right and need to improve on, but I thought just even mentally, the way they kicked on from going 1-0 up was something that, again, we haven't seen. I think it's been their biggest problem, is scoring a goal and then going, that's enough. Look at the Brighton game, for example. They took the lead for an own goal and then just sat off and were happy at 1-0. But no, in this game, they pushed on, they got a couple more goals, and they really put the result to bed, which meant that when Mouchon did score late on, it was 3-1 and it wasn't 1-1, and suddenly they're going to drop points again. So they did want to kick on and get a couple more goals in that aspect. I thought that it's probably the best performance from Sonia Blackstenius I've seen in quite a while. I thought she was absolutely brilliant. Just composure. Yeah, and it shows that if you can get, she's got all the making of a really good striker. I think the one thing she's lacked a little bit in her game across the last season or so was just a little bit of composure when she gets in front of goal, gets in great positions, but consistently misses the target or a poor shot. But in this game was really clinical, took her chances well, and looked really comfortable leading the line for Arsenal. And again, I've been the biggest critic of playing Alessia Russo in the 10 because I think it's a massive, massive error. But I thought Russo did play very well in that deeper role. And I don't think it's the right thing to do because Alessia Russo is one of the best strikers in the world. You should never put her in the 10. But she did play well in this game. But it was better from Arsenal, exactly what they needed going into Chelsea coming up this Saturday. But we said it's exactly what international breaks can do. Just a bit of a reset, a go again for the team. And yes, Leicester did collapse, and the own goal didn't help, and they looked really poor at the back. But Arsenal did well to take full advantage of it because it's the kind of game that on paper I could have seen Arsenal only winning by a goal or drawing 1-1 and another drop of points, but they did well to get a couple of goals on the score sheet and to just get a good performance behind them going into a big game this weekend.
Yeah, the second point on my sheet was going to be Stina Blackstenius. I feel like I'm going back a distance there, but Blackstenius was excellent in this game. I think the way that Russo and Blackstenius were able to combine quite effectively in this match. I understand your point, but I think my opinion has changed slightly on how Arsenal's front line works because of how they are looking to play with the rest of their team. They need a striker who's going to play on the shoulder, and Russo doesn't do that. Russo wants to drop in and receive the ball, and that's fine if you've got wingers who sort of want to break into that space. You've got an attack midfielder who wants to break into that space, but no one's doing that. So you end up with very little presence actually as a number 9 or going through the middle. And that's why I think Arsenal struggle to create opportunities, because you often end up with this sort of horseshoe around the 18-yard box where you're creating chances, but everyone's dropping out and no one's in the penalty area. Whereas actually, when you're building up from deeper phase and you've got that striker to hit in behind, it definitely helps that Leicester's defence was all over the place in this game. But I think the way Blackstenius was able to stretch that Leicester backline just created a lot more space in that sort of midfield area for Arsenal to flourish. And those runs in behind, I mean, they were able to pick her out quite a few times. And obviously, that third goal came from one of those runs, the fourth goal as well. Both those runs in behind for Blackstenius, running off the shoulder of the defender. And then likewise, Russo looks really good. I mean, the opening goal, Alessia Russo's strike, it's Blackstenius stretching that back line, being closer to goal, that leaves the space on the edge of the box for Alessia Russo. And while there's obviously a little bit of fortune to that goal and the way that it's played into the box, and it's a miscontrol from Blackstenius that sets up perfectly for Alessia Russo, you do need that little bit of fortune. But because of the structure they implemented with Blackstenius making the run beyond and Russo playing in the 10, they were able to be a bit more effective in those roles. So I thought this was a sign of things to come for Arsenal. I think that they've got to, if they want to play with wingers who are going to play on the touchline, they need a focal point to their attack. And I think for now, that has to be Stina Blackstenius. And, as much as I think Alessia Russo is a better striker, she's better in the right system, but I don't think this is the right system. If you've got Cal Dente who wants to drift inside, then that's, or if you play Olivia Smith on the left and she's going to drive inside with the ball, then having Russo pulling out is fine. And because then you still get someone occupying those central areas. But when you've got Smith on the right and you've got someone like Mead on the left, or you've got Kelly on the right, no one's running into the penalty area there. Ford on the left as well. No one's running into the penalty area. So you need a Stina Blackstenius to play up front, to make the runs beyond, to stretch the opposition backline, to make life more difficult for them. So I thought Arsenal, this was their best attacking display of the season. It helps the fact that Leicester were as poor as they are. I think it would be remiss of us to suggest that they completely tore Leicester apart. That was in part because Leicester were very poor at the back in this game, but it's certainly a much improved performance from Arsenal in the attacking third. I thought they looked a lot more clinical, they created a lot more chances, and they looked a lot better in those areas. Again, though, still don't think the problem is solved. I still think there are issues in this squad, as we saw in this game. Mistakes still prevalent. They really struggled to build up, didn't they, Harry?
Yeah, it was, again, as you say, I think that it's one of those where they could have had a lot more. And as you say, that the play could have been a lot better. I still think that they, again, I mention it every single week, but you've got to look at that almost back six, not the back six, but your deepest 6 players, your pivot and your back 4. Again, a lot of change to the back four in this game. I thought that was an interesting call. I liked it from Slagers because it benefited them to have a bit of rotation. It's something that we've criticised her for not doing for the rest of this season, but it did lead to. So again, it was just a bit slow. I still don't think the pivot's correct. I'll say it every week, and Quarantine Little will still play every single minute of every single game that Rene Slagers is in charge, but I still think that it doesn't get the best out of everything he needs, and it's one of those where it just. I think Leicester did well at times to press them, but we know Leicester don't like to get that high up the pitch. And that, again, it's the same old story of when a team don't come right at Arsenal, it can be difficult to get through them. Again, I mentioned that Villa game, but when sides aren't right onto them and they can then open them up and cause them all sorts of problems, and they just sit off a little bit, it gives them something to do. I mean, it didn't help when Leicester did come onto them. Arsenal, nearly did mess it up. I mean, Van Donslav got away with one massively when she just kicked it into Shannon O'Brien's thigh, and luckily for her, it rebounded straight back to the Arsenal goalkeeper and not into the back of her net. But that at that point, if that had gone in, that's 1-1, and suddenly it's a different game. So Arsenal have just got to be careful defensively and the way they want to play, because once they got the ball up there, once they were there, absolutely brilliant, no problems at all. But getting from A to B has got to be looked at, because if Leicester don't make it as easy for them once, to just get over the top, and I guess that's what having Blackstenius does give you another option if you can't play out, which is a massive help to have more than one way to get up the pitch. But they've just got to be careful that that won't work against every single opposition in the league. They won't allow you to have all the space you want out wide and to just let your striker get in behind every single time you kick the ball long. So it's something they've got to look at. But I think once they got the ball there, it was fine. But it's just about how they get it there. It worked at times, but again, for a top side, you'd expect it to be almost functional every single time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely you would. I think what was also quite interesting was how Arsenal used their fullbacks in this game by having Taylor Hines at right back and McCabe at left back. You got two quite aggressive fullbacks, even when they subbed those players out. And we saw Jan Niswanger come in at left back, and we saw Emily Fox come in at right back. They still were quite aggressive in how they were playing. I thought it was quite interesting to see, because you usually see one tuck in and one push forwards. In this game, they sent both forward. And actually, that is probably what resulted in the goal, because Noé Mouchon's goal, because everyone's pushed forward in that moment. And then I'm not really sure what Beth Mead is trying to do. Drifting inside with the ball fairly aimlessly. The pass was poor. It gets cut out and Leicester then break. And the problem you've got when both fullbacks are pushed up is that your rest defence is left with Catley, Cadena and Little. And none of those are particularly quick players. I think Catley was dragged out of the equation as well, who is quicker than the other two. But that was the situation where Little should have just taken her out. That's take the yellow card. But for some reason, and I thought the game management for Arsenal, it's weird, because in every other game this season, I think they've gone defensive too early. But I think in this game, they didn't go defensive, and that's why they conceded that goal. And I think, they made up for it with another goal later on, but they'd have rather won 3-0, kept the clean sheet and made it look more imposing. But they kept going attacking, and their fullbacks had pushed up. It left them a little bit exposed. And Little should have taken out Mouchon, because she blast past Cadena. I mean, I thought she was the road runner the way that she just ran away from Little and Cadena, burst in behind. That was a really tidy finish. And it's a real positive light in an otherwise pretty poor Leicester performance. But no Mouchon back. It looked really good in this game. I mean, that was a really impressive goal. So, yeah, but I think, that just shows the rest defence problem for Arsenal when they do give a little bit more licence to attack to those wide players. So, yeah, I thought it was quite interesting to watch, but much more direct, much more aggressive from Arsenal in attack. Blackstenius was excellent, and yeah. As for Leicester though, very poor. Defensively, I thought there was again no organisation. The own goal was tragic from Keys to. I think it's a difficult one, because obviously you are going back towards your own goal, but don't slide in towards your own goal. That's such a bad idea, and it's just so many better ways of dealing with it. And yeah, that was quite a cheap one to concede, and I think there was so many times where, similar to the Kelly Gargo goal, where she's allowed to bring it down the penalty area and just smash it in, and no one does anything. There's so many times where Arsenal did just get into positions. I mean, even the Russo one, no one really reacts to anything. They just stand there and let her have a shot. the Blackstenius running in behind, you think, oh, we'll drop our line a little bit deeper, and then we'll go from there. But instead, they kept letting Blackstenius running behind, or you go the other way and you go, we're going to push our line really high, and then we're going to make it more difficult for Blackstenius to make those runs in behind. But instead, they kept letting her in behind, and she kept getting in great positions to score. So there wasn't really that adaptability from Leicester in this match at all. Just thought they were really poor defensively. As for the table, Arsenal remain in 5th. Everyone in the top 5 won this week, but it's important they kept that distance to the sides in the top 4, because if they had lost again or drawn again here, that pretty much ends any hope of the title. But they've won here, they've got back to winning ways. They face Chelsea on Saturday. That's the most important game. If they win that, they go 2 points off Chelsea, and they push themselves into a much better position. So this could be the turning point for Arsenal, but this Saturday is going to be so important.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive, as you say. I think that it's one of those where these are the kind of wins they need to just keep them there, to keep them on the coattails. So if anything does happen, if any of them do slip up, then they're there to pounce on it. But as you say, it's now all in their hands. They have to beat Chelsea on Saturday, because yes, they'll still have to play them at Stamford Bridge, but they do not want to go to Chelsea in the new year at Stamford Bridge while Chelsea are 8 points ahead of them, because that is going to be a very, very hard game to win. So I think it's very important that Arsenal try and get a result. Well, obviously they'll try, but they get a result against Chelsea on Saturday if they want to have any chance of toppling them at the top of the table. But a long way to go, and they proved that this was a performance that is on the road to starting to solve their main issues.
Yeah, as for Leicester, well, I mean, I don't think this is too bad a result, really. It was a difficult performance to watch, and obviously they don't want to lose any game 4-1, but in the grand scheme of their season, no one expected them to get points from this game. I think it's very much a, move on and forget that, because their big important games are coming up. West Ham this Sunday, most important game, really. If they win that, they're 8 points off the bottom 2. At that point, they're in a really good position where they should just get away with not really being drawn into that relegation fight, which is insane to say, Leicester being in that position. But every week, if as long as the other two teams lose, Liverpool and West Ham, it doesn't really matter what Leicester do. And at the moment, those two sides can't buy a win. Yeah. So, I don't think it's too bad for Leicester this week, but I think the performance will be more worrying for Rick Passmore. I think what Leicester have done very well this season is where you look at the Chelsea game where they only lost 1-0, you look at the Tottenham game where they only lost 2-1. Yes, the United game was really poor, and that was shown again in this match, their defensive frailties, but they've sort of prided themselves on being quite defensively solid even in those tough matches. This, though, was the opposite of that. So that somewhat worrying, but I think, that given the difficulty of the fixture, won't be a huge concern. Let's move on then to leaders Chelsea. It's Chelsea 2-0 London City Lionesses. I think a fairly routine victory for the Blues. There were times where London City troubled them, but for the most part, Chelsea were the team in control in this match. Not as comfortable as I think Chelsea would have liked. When you see City, Arsenal, United all won their game by 4 or 5 goals against LCL, you would have expected that Chelsea would score a similar number, but despite having the dominance, despite creating chances, they really struggled, similar to recent weeks, to put them in the back of the net. Yeah, again, it was another performance where Chelsea had the opportunities to score quite a lot, but just didn't take them. Again, a lack of clinicality in the final third, in and around the opposition penalty area, and I thought that London City were there for the taking. Again, there were signs from London City that are a bit more positive, but overall, the fundamental problems still remain for them, and that's something they've got to sort out, a problem they've got to deal with. But yeah, Chelsea, it was wasteful. It was obviously good enough to win. It was a decent performance, still got the job done and still did score 2 goals, but could have scored a lot more. And again, we talk about that Chelsea standard, how that it is set very high to deliver that kind of level every single week, and it was probably another game where they were just off that kind of level and that kind of expectation. So I think that it's one of those where missing chances isn't a problem when you have loads and you still score 2. It only becomes a problem when you don't get that many and then you don't take any of them and suddenly you end up dropping points in a game. So I think it's one of those where it's
it's fine for these games, but they've got to get it right in other matches and make sure it doesn't happen for this Saturday, for example.
It's the volume of missed chances for me. Even if you just look at it as a percentage, it's so many shots. 17 shots in this game, only 3 on target. It's got it's the same number of shots on target as London City had. London City never looked like scoring in this game at all, but Chelsea 2.62 XG to only return 2 goals when Arsenal scored 4 from a total of 1.9. Chelsea should be doing better in front of goal. They had the chance to kill this game off. I saw a London City fan talking about how, if London City had taken their chances, I don't recall London City having a good chance. The few times where they broke away quite effectively, but I thought Hannah Hampton was excellent as a sweeper. They kept putting that ball in behind. I like that London City are playing that direct way. I think they've learnt from the Arsenal, United, the City game, that trying to play out from the back, trying to play lovely football against these top sides is difficult. And London City were much more direct in this game. I thought they were much more aggressive in the press as well.
Yeah.
So to an extent, they sort of gave them more respect, but also didn't give them too much respect, because in these other games, it's felt that they are disrespecting their opponent by still trying to play out from the back and then not really engaging in the press. Whereas in this game, they were very quick in the press. There was one where they turned it over and Isabel Goodwin really should have hit the target. And they really made life difficult for Chelsea to build out from the back. I thought it was a professional performance from Chelsea, though. Goal right at the start of the game and right at the end of the game. But for most of the match, they did dictate the way of the game. 57% possession. This game, as I say, a lot more shots than London City, much higher XG than London City. Should have probably scored more than they did in this match. I thought the substitutions as well for Chelsea were very good. The first 15 minutes of that second half, London City started to strangle back control, wrestle back control, but Chelsea were very good at bringing on the subs at the right time and just strangling the game.
Yeah, I thought again, it's game management. It's something that the top sides do so well, and as you say, it did look to be one of those games that London City may just get something out of it. They may pull it back, but Chelsea, they timed it well, and they measured it. It was, they didn't panic and decide, okay, we're under a bit of pressure now, let's go make 4 changes, 5 changes, but just, manage it, put breaks in the game, give yourself, just give yourselves, time to rest and get back in and just catch up with the game. And slowly but surely they got better and better as the second half went on, and obviously scored late on. But yeah, it was well managed. It was a well coached performance. Again, there were issues with it, but in terms of the situation that Bompastor found her side in, she did very well to deal with that and just to make sure they did get the result through and not make any slip-ups. And again, it's what champions do. They make sure it's a kind of game that definitely could have unravelled for Chelsea. And if London City had got a goal from something, then suddenly it would have been very much game on. But Chelsea didn't allow that to happen. They remained in the lead and did well to just manage their advantage rather than going for it and potentially making a mistake or letting London City capitalise. They did well to just see the result through and get the job done. But as I said, it was a well-coached performance from Bompastor, and I thought that she got it right in terms of making sure her side could see it through to the end.
Yeah, as for London City, I've seen a lot of discourse about, this is a much better performance against the top team. I think it was, but to what extent was this a better performance from London City, and to what extent was this a poor attacking performance from Chelsea? Because Chelsea had the chances to make this 4, maybe 5-0, and London City never really looked like scoring. But obviously, the result does change the discourse to a certain extent. How much do you think London City's performance improved? How much do you think it was Chelsea?
I think it was, for London City, this is the closest they've looked like a top side in terms of like a top half side. I thought in their other games, they've looked very much bottom half relegation candidates, but managed to get the results through. In this game, they did look a bit more, top half side. But that doesn't necessarily they got much better. It was just the way they tried to play. It still didn't work. I still think they've got issues, especially defensively. But again, as I say all the time, they've signed those players. It's going to take time to gel. Especially that defending as a unit, working as a unit. That's the bit that's going to take time to get. I thought goalkeeping again could have been better for both goals. I'm not really sure what was going on there. So it's just errors. I still think there are problems for London City. They did improve a little bit, but I agree, Chelsea weren't quite at the races. And unlike the Leicester and Arsenal game, it seemed like Chelsea dropped their standard a little bit while London City raised theirs, and it made the game a little bit closer than perhaps people were expecting. But I think it was better for London City. Definitely a bit more complete, but there's still some issues there that they need to iron out and make sure that they don't end up down the wrong end of the table. They don't want to be there.
As for Chelsea, maintaining their unbeaten start, still remaining top of the league. I think it was important that Chelsea kept the form going into Saturday, which is going to be a very important game in the context of the title race. But yeah, I mean, if Chelsea win that, they'll put themselves in a really strong position. They'll have got to the 8th game of the season. They'll have already beaten City, beaten Arsenal, and drawn with United. I think that's a very positive start. But as I say, so much rests on this Arsenal game now because City beat Arsenal, United got a draw with them, so they're now in a position where if they lose to Arsenal, they lose the ground that they've made. And of course, City United play in a few weeks' time, and if that's a draw, then Chelsea would have the chance to take the lead again. But they won't want to be in that position. They'll want to get the victory and have no problems. So. Yeah, Saturday will be an incredibly important one for the Blues. Let's get on, speaking of Manchester United, to Brighton 2, Manchester United 3. One of the most entertaining contests of the week, and I'm glad we chose to stream it because it was a thoroughly enjoyable game. 5-goal thriller. What do you think of it?
I thought it was a very interesting clash. It was a bit of a weird 5-goal thriller because it didn't really feel like it was a 5-goal thriller, and by that I mean that it's one of those where I thought that even though it was a very close game, like it didn't feel like Brighton were in it until they got back in it. And for example, I thought
naturally,
I know, but at 2-0, I thought that it was Brighton were they looked down and out, but suddenly as soon as they 2-1, I thought game on here and United could slip up, and then 3-1. You think it's over? We're going to added time. Everything. This game's over. But suddenly they're right back in it again. It's like wow. This 5-goal thriller actually ended up being a lot closer than we anticipated. So it definitely was a bit of a weird game. Wasn't convincing for Man United. Probably, as I say, I don't think it was one of their worst performances of the season because I thought they actually played well. But Brighton, again, showing what they can do. They really raised their level and they found that kind of performance that we saw from them last season when they were getting points and were getting results at some of the best teams in the league. So overall, a really enjoyable watch. As I said, a bit of a strange game at times, but a bit of end-to-end stuff as we got into the final 10-20 minutes, and it ended up being a very, very good contest.
Yeah, I think this is a classic game of two halves, really. I thought the first half, United deserved to probably be 2-0 up, at least 3-0 up. Potentially, but they only led by a goal to 0, and that came very late in the half as it was. But yeah, it was a half where United was so good at being able to move the ball forwards. I thought Brighton, they kept trying to play out from the back and it kept not working. What you saw in the second half, though, is that despite a lack of options off the bench, Vidicic was innovative and adaptable, and the changes he made throughout the second half I thought were excellent. I think I'm just going to remind myself of all the substitutions so we can talk about them, but the first job was to bring in Mpome for Kafaji, and that completely changes things because then you take... Because Kafaji left winger, you take her up for a centre-back. What's happening here? But then we saw Mpome come to right back. Oliver Slager's moved to left wing. Everyone sort of adjusts around a little bit. And then you think, oh, okay, interesting, they've changed something up. And then on 62 minutes, they changed again because they brought on Rachel McLaughlin, who's a right back, for their striker, Carla Camacho. And you think, well, now they've taken off 2 attackers for 2 defenders. What's going on here? And they scored 6 minutes after that because McLaughlin moved to the right-hand side. And everyone sort of moved around again. And it was all a bit confusing, but I think that really helped because Brighton understood what they were doing. They understood the change in the message and the change in what they were trying to do now with the ball. And the opposition didn't. And there were moments where United were still trying to figure out how to deal with Brighton. I think especially in that 20-minute period between the Kirby goal and Narsoon, I think, that period was all Brighton, really. I think the second half in general was Brighton playing the better stuff despite the Jess Park goal. I think that was very much an outlier in what was an otherwise very good performance for Brighton in the second half. But yeah, I mean, not one for Minami to write home about. I thought she was particularly poor in that Brighton back line, which is interesting because I don't think it's been too bad this season. But yeah, really poor in this game. I thought the middle pivot were excellent for Brighton. I think they made life for Manchester United very difficult. Frank Kirby, back to her brilliant best. Yeah. The goal was really well taken. And yeah, I thought it was a much better performance from Brighton in the second half. They got that goal right towards the end of the game as well. We thought in extra time, this is going to be a bit interesting now to say a strike, but nothing really came of it. But it was a very entertaining game.
Yeah, it was, definitely. I think it was one of those where neither defence covered themselves in glory, and that was a bigger surprise to see Man United that way over Brighton. I thought that Maya Tissier, I'm not really sure what happened there, but probably the worst performance I've seen her have, which is weird because because it was still probably about a 5-6 out of 10, which is what makes her so impressive. But I thought some uncharacteristic errors. Obviously, Brighton.
Do you think that's the problem when you've got a player who's played so many minutes? I mean, obviously she's now on this streak where she's played like 5 seasons or something stupid consecutively for Manchester United. I don't think she's been there 5 seasons, but it's been something ridiculous like that where she's played every game since she's joined. She's now also playing for England. This congestion at the start of this season with Champions League, with England, with Manchester United, where I don't even think she's missed a minute yet this season for Manchester United. No, she hasn't. She played every single minute for United. She then played every single minute for England. Do you think that's starting to take a toll, and that's why we saw this sort of underperformance?
Absolutely. You cannot play the same 2 centre-halves in every single game this season and expect them to play 8 out of 10 every single game. That is inhumane. That's never going to happen. You could take the best players in the world to ever grace a football pitch, and they still couldn't do that. So it's definitely an issue they are going to have to address. Well, they're going to have to address it very quickly in the Champions League when, without
next week.
Yeah, next week. So that's going to be fun. Tune in for that because that's going to be very interesting to see what they do. But yeah, it's something that they've definitely got to look at because Maya Tissier on her day is absolutely brilliant. But as we've seen, I think we've seen it, Williamson and Bright are 2 brilliant examples of it over the last, not this season, but over the last couple of years where world-class centre-halves, do have off days purely because of the amount of games they're having to play. And I think that, it's hopefully it's something that won't plague Letitia. But I thought both sides were quite poor defensively. And if Brighton hadn't been as wasteful as they were, this was the kind of game where Man United could have definitely dropped points. But they showed that winning mentality. They showed that title-winning credentials of getting the result across the line when perhaps you aren't at your best for the full 90.
Yeah, Brighton, I think, struggled to get their goal scorers in the right positions. Your Sakes, your Kirbys, they're the players who are going to put the ball in the back of the net. And yet, in the first half we saw Kafaj take a lot of shots, and I just don't think Kafaj is particularly good in front of goal. That's why she was taken up at half-time. She really struggled to impact the game. We saw a lot of shots from the central midfielders, which was a bit bizarre. They kept pinging it from the edge of the box. And, I mean, I don't mind trying your luck, but there were so many shots that just didn't really come to anything. And I highlighted it during the game. Because in the first half, Brighton, what they did was they really struggled to get into the central zone and have shots from there. Instead, they were either very deep in central or wide of the goal. In the second half, that all changed. All of their shots, pretty much, were within that central area because they understood they need to start getting opportunities in the right area, in that zone 14, the zone where the most goals are scored from. They started taking shots from there, and they looked a lot more dangerous. And in fact, that's exactly where the Frank Kirby goal came from. Taking a little wider of that, but still, they got opportunities in the right areas. They had players on the pitch who could finish them off, and they found the goals because of it. But yeah, they did a lot better, Brighton. I think that adaptability is such an important characteristic and trait of Vidicic's coaching style. I think the fact that on the fly, they can go from a side who I think struggled a bit in the first half to being really competitive in the second half, arguably the better side in the second half, I think is a really good sign. So, yeah, they've got a manager there that can take them far, but they need to invest. They need to, because the depth was a problem again in this game. The lack of attacking options, I think, really hurt them. And so, yeah, that was a bit of a shame because Brighton, I think, could have won this game on another day if they had Adjurang, if they had Haley, if they had attacking options off the bench. I think they probably could have beaten Manchester United. Let's move on then to our next game, and that is Tottenham 2-1 Liverpool. And this was Tottenham's most difficult performance of the season so far, but they came through it, and I think that says a lot about them.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, as you say, I think we have to be honest, it was probably Tottenham's worst performance of the season, bar the Man City game. And they really were not at the races, but they got the job done against the Liverpool side, who, for me, probably played their best game of the season, bar their Man City game. So I think it's one of those where credit to Martin Ho and Tottenham for grinding out the result, but they can count their blessings in this one because this very easily could have been a very different outcome to a side that are currently pointless in Liverpool. But I thought that I don't think they did anything fundamentally wrong. I thought, again, the box defending was a bit shambolic, and that's still something that seems to plague them every now and again. It's why they conceded so many to Man City. But I thought that overall that they did okay. They pounced on Liverpool errors. They did well to find the back of the net. I thought the Beth England goal was well crafted. And again, I mean, what a finish that is from Beth England. No goalkeeper in the world would have expected her to go back across the goal into the top left corner from the position she was in. And it was a great finish. It's a massive, you've got one of the best goal scorers in the league or to ever grace the league. So, that paid off once again for Tottenham, unsurprisingly. But yeah, it wasn't a great performance from Spurs, but they got the job done, and as you say, that's important because it's what we talk about with top teams is getting results across the line, even when they're not at their best, and they did that in this game, and I think that is. Of course, they will look at the performance and work out what they can do better, but the fact they did get the result shows that they can sometimes rely, because of the quality they've now got, they can rely on that to get them through in certain fixtures like this one.
Yeah, I mean, I was tempted to bring confetti in today to the studio to celebrate because Liverpool scored a goal.
Yeah.
I think it was offside. It was a bit of a tight one. There was a player directly in the line, but I thought that Olsen was still beyond that player when she received the pass.
Yeah, she was absolutely offside. The bigger question will be who touched it on. I can't. I've watched the replay 3 times. I still can't really determine who flicked that on. But oh yeah, Olsen was 100% offside. It's the kind of one that usually the flag would go up just for the. But yeah, I thought that was a bit of a weird one. Got a bit fortunate, but Olsen scored. Someone other than Potter scored a goal.
Absolutely, I think it's very good for Beta Olsen to get off the mark in that sense, even if the goal was slightly, very illegal in how it came about. But yeah, it was one of those games. I think I like games like these where everything was fair. In terms of the fact that both sides Tottenham had 2 big chances. They scored 2 goals. Liverpool had 1 big chance. They scored that goal. Everyone got the goals they deserved, and the result was probably very fair. So I thought that was quite nice. As for the Tottenham goals, the Kogo goal, really tidy cross. How on earth Faye Kirby doesn't deal with that? I'm not sure that is what you get for playing Faye Kirby, quite frankly. I just jump. She jumped and she didn't go anywhere. Well, that just confused me. She jumped. I thought, wait, she's not jumped.
Yeah, initially I found it quite weird because initially when I first watched the replay, because it came up during the game while we were watching Brighton Man United, it initially looked like she'd missed it. And I thought, okay, she has jumped, she jumped for it, but she's just missed it, and that's it. But I think it's when you watch it back, she got a hand to it, and that
almost pushes it on,
and that makes it worse. I think again, I always say this, and whether goalkeepers think I'm right or not, I don't really mind. But I think it's one of those. I always say that as a goalkeeper, if you get a hand to the ball, you should be keeping it out because it shows you could get there. So if you could get there, then you've got to deal with it. You've got to get there and deal with it. So again. If she got a hand to it,
especially when it's a floating ball in the air,
yes,
and all you've got to do is jump a little bit higher. Like I don't know how a human jumps and just doesn't go anywhere. It confuses me so much. There should be more of a spring and get the hands out and deal with it. But yeah, I just thought that was such a poor one, and Toko Kogo is not going to get an easier chance than that.
No.
And then the Beth England goal, I thought this was a really nice breakaway from Tottenham. I think that the way they're able to use that left back, Amanda Dilden, to hold the width on the left-hand side, they made it so difficult again for another side this season been undone by trying to deal with how wide Tottenham have been able to make the pitch, and it's a really well-timed ball. It's an easy cross to get wrong, the amount of times we see that cross just get fizzed across the box fairly aimlessly, but it was a really low-driven, sort of perfect delivery in front of Beth England, as you say. Really tidy finish from England. I think it's the first time this season that Tottenham had to show spirit to get that result. I think that's important. The rest of these performances have been really good from Tottenham and they've been disciplined and they've come forward as well. But I think it's the first time this season they've gone behind and come back from that. So that was really important for me to see that team spirit, to see Martin Ho encourage his side to really go from a position where they are behind to pushing forwards and getting that win. I think that's a really important moment for Tottenham, and they are now on 15 points from 7 games. The only games they've lost are to the top 2 teams, Chelsea and Manchester City. I mean, you couldn't dream of a better start to the season for Tottenham. And next weekend, London City away, that realistically should be a win. And their last game in November, in the league, is then Arsenal before they've got Bristol City in the League Cup and the international break. So that'll be a toughie, but in the form they're in, I think they'll look at that Arsenal game, especially, I mean, obviously a lot is dependent on how the game goes on Saturday, but if Arsenal have lost to Chelsea and they've got to go to Tottenham, and Tottenham have beat London City, I think Tottenham have got to go into that game with the belief that they can get something out of it.
Yeah.
They've got to go into that game believing, because looking at the way Arsenal have played recently, they are there for the taking sometimes. So, yeah, I've been really impressed with Tottenham this season. I think they've been one of the biggest surprise package, really.
Yeah.
One of the most impressive sides we've watched. I think Martin Ho's done incredibly well there, and the players have responded to it really well. But, yeah, obviously there's still things to work on. I think January is still important for them. I don't think they did enough last summer. I still think they are light in terms of legs in midfield. I think they could probably do with another winger potentially. Depends how highly they rate Lena Gunning-Williams. I know she's come off the bench a few times, but how close is she to being, in contention to start? That'd be the question for me. But yeah, they rotated well in this game. The fact that they were able to bench Katinka Tandberg and still came away with a 2-1 victory. I know she came off the bench, but only played half an hour in this game, and they still came away with the win. So yeah, really impressive stuff from Tottenham. Let's get to our last game of the day. Then it's Manchester City 1-0 West Ham. This was, how on earth did Man City not score more than one goal in this game? They had so many opportunities. West Ham was so open. And yet, Man City only scored once.
I couldn't believe it. I think, again, this is going to sound slightly strange, but I think this was probably one of West Ham's worst performances of the season. Which sounds crazy because they only lost 1-0, and obviously they've been hammered for the other games, but they were absolutely terrible, not only because of the fact they should have conceded more, but the fact they didn't put the ball in the back of the net. I don't understand. They could have... Again, I think there was chances then to find the back of the net, but the shots were so poor. I've never seen a front three that on paper looked so good, but on the pitch look just so terrible. I thought that the chance that really stung me was Fionn Morgan's ball into the box that fell to Asai, who then put it out the ground. That for me, I just couldn't understand it. But West Ham were all over the place, as you say. Man City should have scored about I don't know how many shots there. How many shots there?
18 shots, one on target.
Wow, I mean that is
and that went in. Obviously,
that is
it's a brilliant finisher, by the way, by Ayoba for Gino. The way that she's able to run around the ball and then strike across it and beat the goalkeeper is a really tidy finish. But City had so many chances. There was that Hasegawa one just after half time when the ball comes into the penalty area, and she tries to just tuck it in. I think almost she's got to just let it go. Shaw is stood in the 6-yard box. If she lets it go, Shaw scores, or you've got to touch it towards goal. But yeah, there were so many chances. How City didn't hit the target more, how they didn't score more goals is beyond me. 4 big chances created, 3 missed. Obviously, the other one was the Pagino goal that was scored. But yeah, 68% possession. They dominated this game. How on earth did they not score more?
Yeah, I think that Pryor hit the crossbar in the second half. I thought Khadija Shaw was a bit unlucky to not get a penalty. I think Shemek was very fortunate that the ball went the other way, because it's one of those where Shaw got there first and then Shemek did come through and catch her. I think the fact that the ball had already gone past both, like Shaw had already flicked it past both of them and towards the net, although it wasn't going in. I think I think Shemek got a bit fortunate at that one because she did catch Shaw. I mean, Shaw went down injured, obviously. I'm not sure what the referee saw there. I hope the referee's okay. He had to be replaced at half time because he felt unwell, but that didn't affect the result. But yeah, City really should have had more. West Ham, very, very lucky. I thought that, again, it's the same things we've said about Liverpool and West Ham. They're both on 0 points, but while Liverpool, there is, there's a bit of explanation behind that. And with, Gareth Taylor, he's been very open and honest in his post-match, and he says that they are, they're finding it tough right now, but they're going to keep fighting. West Ham, I look over there and they just seem to... I don't really know what is going on with West Ham and what is going on with Ryan Skinner. Whether they realise they've played 7 football matches and are on 0 points. I don't think they do. I really don't. They're still trying to play football out the back. They're still trying to play like a top team, and it's just not working. At what point are they going to give in and realise that they've got to try and start getting points on the board? And by doing that, that is going to mean drop players behind the ball and look to go direct into the likes of Sai and Martinez. I think they've got to change the game plan.
It looks to me like a team who the manager's lost the dressing room. I think you look at the way that West Ham are playing, and it's at this point where they look so lost that it's not just missed signals. It's quite actively they are not listening to the manager anymore at this point. And I think that's when it's time for a change. I think for me, they've got Leicester and they've got Everton. and then it's the international break. There isn't a better time of the season to do it. Those 2 games, if they are not positive results, Skinner has to go.
Yeah.
I just can't. There's no justification to keep her. You say, keep it till Christmas because you've got the winter break. It's a bit longer, a chance to turn things around. I just don't see the value in giving her United and Liverpool. Liverpool's the most important game in December. They've got to win that match.
Yeah.
No other way about it. And yeah, you look at this run now of fixtures. They've got to beat Leicester, got to beat Everton. If they don't come away with something from those 2 games, I think Skinner has to go for me. And that is the harsh reality of the situation. But if they don't win those matches, they are in a terrible, terrible position. And that game against Liverpool in December is so crucial. So for me, I'd say the November international break at the moment would be when I'd expect her to go, because they've got to make that decision soon. And I don't think they can afford to wait till Christmas, because if they lose that Liverpool game, then they're not even level on points with Liverpool anymore, which is the only thing that's keeping this West Ham season from being a complete disaster.
It's exactly that. Their situation looks better because Liverpool haven't got a point yet, but for me, Liverpool are getting closer and closer. I thought, this weekend is obviously the closest Liverpool have got. Yes, both Liverpool and West Ham both only lost by 1 goal margin, but Liverpool were in that game and they could have found the back of that. I thought it looked at times they were going to get a point from that match, and that's the thing. Is I think that if West Ham don't butt their ideas up, it could get to the point where by the time they play each other, Liverpool might have 3 points on the board.
Well, Liverpool's problem is that they haven't scored. You can clearly identify the problem for Liverpool. There's been 4 games this season they've lost by a 1 goal margin. I think you can argue there's a bit of misfortune that they haven't got a point or a win yet this season. I think they've very much been in a position where they should have more. Whereas when you look at the West Ham games this season, it's not just been coming forward that's been a problem. They've been awful defensively. They've been awful coming forwards. They've been awful at progressing the ball. They have been smashed considerably by a number of teams already this season. 5-1 to Arsenal, 4-1 to Brighton, 4-0 to Chelsea. A bit more positive in recent weeks, only with a handful of 1-0 and 2-0 losses, but it's still not good enough. And they look miles off it at the moment in terms of being able to compete. So, yeah, Leicester's a must-win. Yeah, Leicester's a must-win. Looking at that Leicester side and looking at the West Ham side, West Ham have got to beat them. Yeah, if they don't, and then they don't beat Everton, I think Skinner's got to go. I don't think that's too unreasonable a comment. I think they have been so poor so far this season. And the other thing I want to say is, what a mental game week where Hasegawa and Letizia are the players making mistakes and struggling. That is just it's crazy, because those 2 are the most consistent players in the league, and they both had a tough game week at the same time. But there we go, weird week for football. But there we go. Shall we get into our Aerial Fantasy segment of the show then? Because it was a marginally better week for me. I used my clean slate chip. I still went down. I don't know how, but there we go. I used my clean slate. We'll put it on screen now. My team. Slightly better week. Actually had some points this time. Annoyingly, again, the captaincy didn't pay off. I captained Khadija Shaw, and she decided she didn't want to score against West Ham, so that's always ideal. So 2 points from her, double to 4. 2 from Eva Jones, 2 from Vinberg as well. 1 from Films, 1 from Letizia, 1 from Reed. Into more positive points, though. 4 from Cowden Day. She's just into a magnet of points. Should have had another 2, but Slade decided she had to take her off in the 59th minute, of course. Then we've got Hampton 6, Cash Price 6, really happy with both of them. Toko Koga with 8, very happy with that score. If only she'd scored in a week where Tottenham kept a clean sheet, I'd be on for a very handy score. And then Jess Park, the star of the game week, 13 points. Very happy with that in her first week in the side, so I'm very glad I brought her in. Feels like a bit of a waste of a clean slate, though, because I took out Fagino.
Yeah.
I took out Ellie Carpenter.
Yeah.
So overall, still not great. I took out Riviere, who got a clean sheet, brought in Letizia, who didn't, because obviously Riviere came off before they conceded, I believe. So yeah, brilliant. But yeah, that summarises my game week. Still, I used the clean slate, looked better, but still lost. I still would have got more points if I hadn't done it.
That is true. I think it's the first game where you've actually outscored me.
I think it is.
39 points for myself this week, a very disappointing match week, and my main problem was players either not starting or not performing. I'll start with the players that didn't really do anything. 1 for Fox, obviously she didn't start. 1 from Olga Arsenan, she didn't start. 0 from Asmita Ale, because she ended up conceding 4 goals and got booked. 1 from Letizia, because she conceded 2 and didn't play very well. That was not a point scoring metric. Van Donstar again, only 2 because she conceded. But The only point scorers being Fagino 10, Bjorn 7, and Riviere 7. Bar that, it was a blank from Captain Shaw. Salmon didn't start, but she came on and got an assist, so 4 points for that isn't terrible. Robbed of an Olivia Holt assist because Faye Kirby touched the ball. I was very annoyed at that. Holt should have got the assist for the Koga goal because she put the ball across. If Kirby hadn't touched it, doesn't matter. It was still Holt's assist. Absolute daylight robbery. So not happy with that. Yeah, 39 points, really disappointing. No one seems to do anything. I was quite frustrated.
Yeah.
Without Fagino, I'd had about 20. I'd had 29 points, which were terrible. So massive credit to her. But yeah, nothing really happening with my team over here.
Yeah, fair enough. As for next week, we will get to our league in a moment. But as for next week, at the moment, I don't know if I need to make any transfers. I might just start to future-proof the side. I think if I was going to do anything, I might take out Calante for a week on a punt, and knowing I'll bring her back the week after. But yeah, because other than that, I mean, I may deal with the fact that Katie Reid didn't play and bring in another defender, but I'm quite happy with my defence this week of Vilms, Letitia, Casper and Koga. Obviously, Vilms against United isn't perfect. In fact, I might sub her out for Kendall. But yeah, I'm not too annoyed. I like the fact I've got 2 Tottenham against LCL. I like that I've got 2 Manchester City against Everton. I think I've realised that the meta is to have a maximum of 2 per club because of how much the schedule rotates round. Because there are so few teams in the league, there's always like a tough game every 4 weeks. So you don't want to end up with loads of players from one team, because then if they have a tough game, you can't really deal with that problem. Whereas I'm quite happy because when games like Chelsea Arsenal come up, I can bench Katie Reid and it's not too much of a problem. So I'm quite happy with that. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure about what I'm going to do with that team. Well, as for you, what are you doing?
I've got all sorts of problems going on.
Brilliant.
I've got, again, a load of problems with a few players that aren't starting games. Grant didn't start for Villa, and she's currently in my team. Artinen didn't start for Tottenham, she's currently in my team. I've got a massive goal kicker problem because Van Donsel's got Chelsea, and Roebuck not only has got Man United, but she doesn't play. Obviously, I'm going to bench Bjorn and Fox because they're playing each other, and it's Chelsea Arsenal. I'm not risking it there.
You're going to back one of them?
Maybe. I might have to at this rate because I've got Salmon on my
bench.
Salmon doesn't start either. I've got no one that starts, so I'm just going to hope for Gino keeps scoring because she's the only player that delivers for me anymore. It's frustrating me. It's really frustrating me that no one in my teams, everyone's just stopped playing for some reason.
I'll be honest. Where are you now in the Women's Football Chat League?
I don't know. Let me have a look. Apparently I'm 97th. I'm not 97th. I'm higher than that. Let me scroll down and find it. Surely I'm not 97th. I am 97th. How? That's a joke. I was a lot higher than that a couple of weeks ago.
I'm 272nd.
That's not great.
I didn't even know there were that many players in this league. Apparently there's 380, but 272nd, not particularly happy with how I've performed in the first few game weeks. I'm going to need a miracle to turn this around, but you never know. Maybe next week Alex Dottir will score a hat-trick, and that'll be all right then. But I am tempted to play her because she's visionary. She doesn't actually start for them, but she is visionary, and they have got West Ham. So she might score off the bench. I'm tempted to put her in. She is on my bench. But yeah, other than that, interesting. Shall we have a look at who's actually doing well at this game? Because top of the league now is Sister Slagers. Jay with only 43 points this week, but does stay top of the league. Kat and Khadija Shaw had Beaver Jones, Bene, did not do a lot. Holt, De Landes, Catley all struggle, but Toon 6, Atlan 6, Casper 6, and Koga 8, as well as Calante 4, help them stay top of the league. Have you got a big score for me, Harry?
Well, the biggest score I can find is a score that has fired this person to second in the league. Lockie M with Waterpalova, 80 points scored this week with the use of the triple captain on Alessia Russo. Russo scored 10, that's tripled to 30. Had Riviere 7, Rose 6, Carpenter 15, a massive haul from her. Kirsty
See, some people choose to keep them.
Yeah.
Keep Carpenter in their side. Other people take them out.
The only other scorers for them were Hanson 7 and Toon 6, so a very good game week for Lockie M, using the triple captain well there of Russo, and yeah, firing themselves right up into second place in the table.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if there's anything above an 80. I can't find anything, so I think the highest point scorer this week goes to, who was it?
Lockie M.
Well done, Lockie M. If you're watching, That is everything, though, for today's show. Hope you have enjoyed. We're back with more next weekend. Unfortunately, we're not live this Saturday for Chelsea Arsenal because we're going to be at the game. But don't worry, because there will be a preview out on Friday ahead of that match. And if you are going to the game, if you're a fan either of Arsenal or Chelsea and you're going to the match at the Emirates and you see us, feel free to say hi. We'll be in the Chelsea end chanting about why we don't like Arsenal. But other than that, feel free to come over. I'm sure it won't be hostile. That is everything for us today. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.